Hello, let's talk about Romeo and Juliet, Act 1, Scene 1. The play has now gotten started, and wow, does it start off with a bang. Now, before we get going, let me tell you about language. The language in this play is crazy. You've probably already noticed in Scene 1, there's some adult humor, some adult language here and there. We've got Gregory and Samson um, talking about taking people's virginity and stuff like that. We have Romeo being a womanizer. I'll point some of this out later. Um, there are going to be times when you're reading this and you might think, wow, are they really saying what I think they're saying? Chances are, yes. Um, Another thing about this is a lot of students look at this and think, holy cow, why are they talking like this? People don't talk like that. I've had English teachers that say, well, that's how they used to talk. I don't think that's true. If you look at this play, it's poetry. It's all poetry, especially the wealthy and the rich and the upper class. They talk in iambic pentameter. They talk in blank verse. Blank verse is unrhymed iambic pentameter. I just pulled out this line from what Benvolio said. I do but keep the peace. Put up thy sword, or manage it to part these men with me. If you look at that, those two lines are unstressed followed by stressed syllables. There's 5 repetitions of that for a total of 10 syllables. I do but keep the peace. Put up thy sword. 10. Or manage it to part these men with me. 10. Okay. We see this when Benvolio and Tybalt talk. We see this when the Montagues talk. We see this when the prince talks, especially the prince. But commoners, low class, servants, they tend not to talk that way. Their speech is somewhat shorter, except for the nurse, we'll see her later. And it's more rough, it's more uneducated. That's just a Shakespearean distinction between low class and upper class. Okay. This first scene is big. There is a lot going on. There's a lot of small parts working together to make this scene work. We start with a fight. Then we've got to break up the fight. Then we've got to worry over Romeo, right? He's the main character of the play. And then we find out what's wrong with Romeo, right? It starts off where he's not in the best situation. So let's look at each one of these parts. The play starts big with this fight. We've got the two houses that hate each other, and we have the lower class, the servants. They're trying to be upper class, right? We've got these stupid puns with being colliers and not carrying coals and pushing people up to the wall and taking the wall. And it's kind of silly. It's kind of risque. But they're trying to talk big like the upper class. What's interesting, though, is they want to start the fight, right? The Montagues want to start the fight with these Capulets, but they're afraid of the law. And the law is you cannot start a fight. So these guys are trying to coax the other people into starting a fight. I've seen this in the classroom, right? Somebody poking somebody else to get someone to turn around and yell. And then, of course, the teacher always gets the second person. That's what they're doing here. And it's interesting, they use that silly little insult of biting a thumb, right? Now, are you moved to fight because I did that? No. But in Shakespeare's day, or according to the houses, it'd be the same as flipping somebody off. So they get into this huge fight, and they see Benvolio and Tybalt show up, and Benvolio's first action is to stop the fight, right? He pulls out a sword, and he tries to put an end to it. Tybalt comes up, he pulls out his sword, but he wants to fight. He wants to continue this and escalate it. Benvolio and Tybalt are two interesting characters. Okay, they're both cousins to main characters. Benvolio is Romeo's cousin. Tybalt is Juliet's cousin. And they're both very different. Benvolio is the peacemaker. Tybalt is the tyrant, fiery fighter. Okay, so they are an interesting foil. A foil are two characters that have similar but different qualities, and we can learn a lot about them by comparing and contrasting them. So Benvolio says, stop, no fighting. Tybalt is like, yes, let's fight. And they start fighting. Benvolio defending himself, Tybalt trying to kill him, and the town gets involved, right? People are getting their partisans, getting their bills, they're getting their rakes and spears, and they're trying to stop this riot in the streets. And the prince comes out to stop the fight. He's in charge. And when he comes out, he starts yelling at them, put up your weapons. And he's like, whoa, aren't you guys listening to me? I mean, you're bleeding out purple blood from your veins. And then he starts yelling on plane of torture and death, throw down your weapons. And then people are eventually like throwing down their weapons. And the prince gives this long speech about 3 times you've caused a riot in my streets. You've got to stop. And he passes judgment. He passes a law. If ever you break the peace again, your lives are forfeit. You start a fight, you die. That's it. No questions asked. Bam. And he yells at Capulet and he yells at Montague, the 2 houses, the 2 leaders of the houses. And he tells Capulet, you come with me. Montague, you come later. And he's going to read him the riot act and tell him to behave. Okay, we don't see that in the play, but we hear about his admonition later. And the prince leaves, everyone clears up, and we're left with Montague, his wife, and Benvolio. And they're worried about Romeo. And I like Lady Montague's worry. Okay, her son could have been in this fight. He could have been killed. Right glad I am he was not at this fray. Okay, she said. But she's worried about him. Romeo's dad, Lord Montague, is worried about him because he runs away at day, or runs away at night. He comes back during the day. He locks himself in his room, and he won't let people in. He's crying. He won't talk to his parents. They've tried to ask him, "What's wrong? What can we do to help?" This to me is crazy believable. Think about your situation, right? When you're moody, when you're upset, and you just want to go to your room and shut out the world, and your parents come knock on your door, are you going to say, "Come on in, let me tell you everything that's bothering me"? We don't do that as teenagers. And Romeo is a typical teenager. He's being very moody and something's bothering him. And as they're talking about him, Benvolio spies Romeo in the distance. There he is. So he tells the parents to shoo, I'll go talk to Romeo and we'll find out what's wrong. And boy, do we find out what's wrong, right? Romeo's lovesick. Okay, he loves this woman. And Benvolio and Romeo play this little game where Benvolio wants to know who it is. And Romeo's like, well, I do love a woman. He doesn't tell us, right? That's Shakespeare just kind of dragging it out and making it kind of interesting. Romeo has some mixed emotions. He's sad. He's upset. And he's complaining to Benvolio that you are bothering me, right? I'm sick. And you're going to ask a sick man how he's feeling, which makes him say that he's even sick. Are you going to ask a sick person to make out his will? Yeah, that'll make me feel better. So we've got a lot of this going on. And we've got some great puns in this also, right? We've got the puns of the arrow, right? Cupid shooting his arrow at him, and then Benvolio trying to guess what's wrong and missing his mark. There's some good stuff there. You can read all about that in the margins on the No Fear Shakespeare stuff. But we find out what's wrong with Romeo. He loves a woman who doesn't love him back. Yet it's more than that. Romeo is a womanizer, right? He wants something and he's not getting it. Let me read this from you here. She will not stay the siege of loving turns. She has Dian's wit. She's standing strong proof of chastity. And then he goes on, she will not open her lap to saint seducing gold. She's not going to spread her legs, is basically what that's saying. That adult language in there we talked about earlier. She is rich in beauty. She's crazy beautiful, only poor that when she dies, her beauty dies her store. She has this beauty in her body, and she's not going to share it with anyone. And Benvolio says, what, she's going to be chaste? And Romeo's like, yeah, she's sworn to be chaste. She's not going to sleep with him. That's Romeo's big complaint here, right? She makes waste for beauty starved with her severity. She cuts beauty off from all posterity. She's not going to sleep with anybody. She's going to be chaste her entire life. And this bothers Romeo. He wants this beautiful woman, and she doesn't want him back. That's what we call unrequited love. But with Romeo, I don't know if it's love, but lust, right? He wants to sleep with this girl. She wants no part of him. Okay, so that's kind of where we are at with this. And then Benvolio and Romeo talk. Benvolio's got some great advice. Don't think about her, right? That's good advice. He also has some other advice. Look at somebody else, right? And maybe you'll find that person more beautiful. So read through that scene again. Pay attention to Benvolio's advice. And know that Romeo is this womanizer that judges women by their beauty. Okay? And we'll meet some other characters in scene 2. I'll talk to you tomorrow.